going to do a project from The Wind in the Willows by Kenneth Grahame. Wonderful, wonderful book full of great descriptions of the wide world and nature. So this project really celebrates that. Riparian, of course, means from the river, right? Like near the river, the habitat around surrounding the riverbank. And so it is inspired by various descriptions of the river and the riverbank that are in the story. So we're starting out here with a template. It's kind of like, you know how when you do paint by numbers and you'll have like say number 3 represents brown, and everywhere you see a 3 you color in with brown. Well, it's sort of like that, only when you see things like green turf sloped down to either edge, that's a description out of the story, right? So when you see that, then you think, oh, in this space we're going to put green turf. And each one of these spaces then has a description in it that tells you what to put in that space. So I'll walk through this and explain more what I mean. But for now, I'll just say we're going to have our bits, our textural bits that are going to be on our picture. And as well as those things, we also have our glue and some scissors. And well, I might use this paintbrush actually to put the glue on, but that's about it. We also have this mat for the background so that it gives our project some weight. And we have our template printed here on blue cardstock. If I hadn't printed this on blue cardstock, I would maybe take some paint. This is the sky area here, and I might fill that in with watercolor or crayon to create whatever color of sky I want. But what I did here is I just went ahead and I printed it on blue cardstock. So I already have the sky done, and then our different parts of the riverbank are going to cover up the rest of the blue. Okay, so I'll walk us through what our materials are here just before we get started on actually assembling it. So here where it says green turf sloped down to either edge, as I mentioned, we need something green. So I have some mosses that I'm planning on putting in this space here. The tree right here is, well, I'd like to use felt actually, because felt has a nice, it just has a nice texture to use for a tree, then covered with a little bit of burlap for bark. But you know, when I went to get the felt out of the cupboard today, I realized that I had exactly no felt. So instead of using felt today, I'm going to either use some brown fabric or I'm going to just use some cardstock. And that's totally fine. And then on top of that, here we have a reference to reeds, and hark to the wind playing in the reeds. Point with my brush here. Reeds and rushes and osiers. Osiers was a new word for me. I'm thinking I might, because this is what I had, I'm using what I have. So I have some reed type things that I'm going to try and use there. And then under the water, lushy green undergrowth, here the roach swim. Lushy green undergrowth, here the roach swim. And that's just repeated over and over again. Lushy green undergrowth. I found these silk flower petals and from like a green daisy, imagine that. And so I'm just thinking I can just put them down here. I'm gonna glue them down there. So I'm gonna use those for that. Roach, that was another new word. I've never heard of fishes referred to roaches, but that is what the language is in this particular description. So I have some foil that I'm gonna make into some little fishes to be swimming under the water. And of course for the water itself, over all of that, I'm gonna lay this cellophane that looks like water. And that's gonna be a neat effect. And last, we have the soil that's gonna go under here in this area right here where it says soil goes here. And for that, I have this wonderful smelling coffee that I'm gonna glue in this space. So that's kind of what we're gonna do. The first thing I will do here is to trim this down, because I want this black to show around the outside of this template. So I'm going to trim this paper down, trim the edges so that the black shows behind it. If you don't have a paper cutter, that's okay. You can just use your scissors. And it's okay if it's not exactly perfect. But since I have a paper cutter, I'm gonna go ahead and use it. there's nothing important that I'm cutting off by doing this. So I'm going to kind of cut off an equal portion of this paper all the way around. I like that. Next, I want to write up in here. I want to do The Wind in the Willows by Kenneth Grahame and some nice writing. So I'm going to take some time to do that. If I had painted this area, I would have to wait for that to dry, of course. But since I use this cardstock, I'm just going to go ahead and do it in some nice pen. So I just tried to use some fancy writing, and then I'll do some basic sans serif, simple, upper lowercase for Kenneth Grahame, remembering to put the E on the end of Grahame. And now I'm going to cover that with some ink. And I could make that fancier, I'm sure, but for right now I'm just going to focus on doing the rest of the elements on this project. I'll go ahead and erase the writing that I had underneath it so it doesn't show in the sky. The next thing I'm going to add is my tree here on the side, and it does not need to match this exactly. This is just a suggestion of how it might look. So I'm going to kind of just draw my own freeform shape here. I'm going to kind of take note of where I should start and maybe where I should finish on this. And I'm just going to draw my own. Draw some roots, whatever I want that to look like. And then I'm going to cut that out. So what you notice is that I just kind of made my own design here. It's very much whatever I made up, and it does not match this, and that's okay. This is not really going to show through. And if any of the words show through, that's perfectly fine, because it's all part of the poetry of the project. Just going to add some pieces of bark, kind of make it look sort of shaggy. There's a little school of roaches, little school of fishes swim along. So here we're putting the riverbank soil on, and I want the coffee to stick everywhere. So I want to make sure that there's plenty of glue. I might even just take my finger and just smush it around to make sure that there's no holes in it, because I want it to be really solid. like without gaps. I don't want to see blue through here. But I also want to be really careful not to get any glue on my water surface, because that will make it look smudgy, I think. All right, so now I'm ready to put my coffee on here, which is the soil, right? So I'm gonna just do this. Now this, of course, is a tree here on the side, and there's the roots that grow down deep, and the roots and all of these grasses and things give structure to the soil and keep it from eroding. And the tree that shades this part of the riverbank also provides shade and keeps the water the right temperature. So I want to be sure to have some willow leaves that will hang down and show us that the tree is coming down from here, that there's a tree overhead. So last but not least, we must be sure to put Ratty's little eye glistening from the midst of his hole. And I think what I'm gonna do is just make a little spot for that right here. I'm gonna put him right here. Put a little bit of glue down. There we go, and that's gonna dry.